Coming to you tonight from Wahoo Baptist Church 3 weeks before the celebration of Easter. And as I deliver these 5 infallible proofs of Jesus' resurrection to our congregation tonight, I wanted to take a special invitation to our YouTube audience and list these 5 infallible proofs that we know Jesus Christ himself rose from the dead. This is the number one argument and the number one separation of the Christian faith from many other world religions, in fact all other world religions, because this is the only thing that we believe gives salvation a life-changing power. We believe the resurrection instills a believer with life from another world and breathes in us the blessed message of the gospel of Christ. The first proof that we know Jesus Christ rose from the dead is based around the Jewish officials of the time period. We know that the Sanhedrin 2,000 years ago, the court that convicted the Lord Jesus Christ of blasphemy, was run almost entirely by the Sadducean sect of the Jewish world. The Sadducees did not believe in the bodily resurrection of any individual. In fact, that is the one teaching that they rejected. And their power and influence covered the Sanhedrin court. Now, if they take a false teacher like they deemed Jesus Christ to be, and they bury him, and they know that he had testified to his followers, according to Matthew 27, that he would raise again the third day, and it's their entire reason that they seal the tomb up. Now, if the Sadducees did not believe in the resurrection, if they are in charge of the Sanhedrin, and if they know Jesus has prophesied before his death that he will raise from the dead, the Sadducees would have made every attempt possible to produce a body for the Lord Jesus Christ. Yet, history proclaims, no other account proclaims, no other record proclaims that the Jewish officials in charge of the condemnation of blasphemy for the Lord Jesus Christ, they ever produced a body. This is a group of people that had everything and the weight of their authority hinging on the fact that they could not let Jesus rise from the dead, but yet they still cannot produce a body. The second reason we know that the Lord rose from the dead deals with the Roman world. We know that Palestine during the time of Jesus Christ was under Roman authority, which is why after the Sanhedrin convicts him of blasphemy, we have to go before a Roman governor named Pilate in order to fulfill the execution of the Lord Jesus Christ. As Pilate is fulfilling the execution, we must remember by history that the Romans famed themselves on their ability to kill people, methodically and almost religiously. They crucified anybody that was an attempt to raise up against the Roman Empire. That's how the Jews snuck in the message of the Lord Jesus Christ, that he was going to be a king from Palestine to overthrow the outside forces. And when the Romans condemned, convict, and execute the Lord Jesus Christ, these people who have famed themselves off their ability to murder common criminals would have definitely not let it get out of the history pages of the world that we had one escape the death penalty. That somehow and in some way, the masters of death themselves had not quite mastered it by letting him rise from the dead. But yet the Roman world that's continued 300 years post the crucifixion, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ still could produce no evidences of a body. The third way that we know Jesus Christ himself rose from the dead is what his followers do after the resurrection. It is common psychology that when the leader of a charismatic group is killed away, that the followers literally disperse and they do nothing with their lives. We see that evidenced in the life of Simon Peter. After the Lord is killed, what does Peter go back to doing? He goes back to fishing in a boat, which is what he did 3.5 years before. But something changes 3 days after the crucifixion of Jesus Christ that turns Peter from the fisherman that he wanted to go back to and turns him into the preacher at Pentecost, and even history tells us that he died a death of martyrdom. Now, why, if there was no psychological change in these people's minds, did Peter ever get out of fishing again and go back into preaching? A common Galilean would not post himself against the Jewish authority and would not post himself against the Roman authority of the day that had just killed the leader of this entire group. If Jesus did not rise from the dead, then his followers would have just simply dispersed and gone back to the normal way of life. But we have evidence upon evidence of men like Peter, James, and John. Men like Thomas who go in and report the histories. Men like Philip the evangelist that go in and become a soul winner. Men like Saul of Tarsus who becomes Paul, proclaiming they saw the resurrected body of the Lord Jesus Christ. The fourth reason that we know the resurrection is sure is that post-mortem resurrection, that is after the 3-day burial period, has never been proclaimed by any other individual religious group. There have been few who have had out-of-body experiences, meaning they've laid on the point of death medically and scientifically for maybe the space of a few minutes to a few hours. But there is only one individual from the histories of the world that claims to have arisen after 3 days of laying in a tomb, and that is the Lord Jesus Christ. This infallible proof exists because He is the only one that can replicate that same life-giving power. The only one that is going to attempt to do it is the Antichrist himself, which will lay in a state of almost death for 3 days by a wound to his head, and then he will supposedly rise again after 3 days of laying in this state. But can I tell you, Satan and all of his forces cannot kill the Antichrist and bring him back to life. And only our believers are going to get this. Why? Because Jesus Christ himself is the one that has the keys of death and of hell. The fifth way, and this is where I want to reach out to our YouTube audience tonight, the fifth way that we know the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ is real is because of what the song says. Well, you ask me how I know He lives within my heart. Romans 10:9 proclaims that belief in the resurrection is the one thing that inspires just a knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ into a faith-based salvation. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised Him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. It is our common desire that if you've taken the time to watch this short segmental film on YouTube, that you will give your heart to Christ. If you will, contact us if need be. If you won't, send us an email, wahooCalendar@gmail.com. Send me a personal email at Brother Levi Nix @gmail.com, or call the church at 706-867-9385 at any point in time if you would like to talk with someone or speak with someone about this. Thank you for tuning in.